So instead of a cell tower 1 mile or 2 miles from you and you still have cell phone service, we're going to have antennas every block, and some poor soul is going to have one mounted to a utility pole maybe less than 20 meters from their home. So this kind of, invasive bombardment with this many antennas, I mean, just in 1 square mile, if you do the math, 1 per block and 16 blocks per mile, that's about 250 antennas per square mile. The millimeter wave is untested. Former FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler openly said that they don't plan to test.
We won't wait for the standards.
The antenna arrays create this steerable beam, which helps concentrate the energy. The beams get pointed at the user.
So we're not quite sure about this, but every about, I'd say 100 meters, there's what looks like a lamppost. At the top of the lamppost, there's a cylinder. Now, we're not too sure whether this is actually emitting light or if it's actually a telephone communication system, i.e. a 5G cell tower. Because when we are walking through this road, we're getting non-stop high readings everywhere.
We've switched on a new era of connectivity. Groundbreaking technology has been installed in 40 smart nodes.
They're everywhere. Yowzers. That is a constant red.
Oh my God.
We are on the road adjacent to George Street, and as you can see, it's a very nice signal. And as you can see, there's nothing on the lampposts.
It's all very odd and suspicious, if you ask me.
Context, this is my AC Wi-Fi router, and at 2 meters away, it's on 2 or 1 green bar. If I go in for it to be 1 meter away, you can see that it jumps up, but it's still in the green, and maybe 1 yellow bar at most. If I go in really close, about 10 centimeters away, that's where I get to the red danger zone levels, and even at that, it's still lower than Sydney levels. So living in Sydney is like living constantly 10 centimeters away from your Wi-Fi router.
My son missed growing up with his friends. My son lost all of his hair. It's not something that I wish on anybody, to watch their child go through what our children have gone through.
Kelly Prime's son Kyle was just 10 years old when he was diagnosed with kidney cancer in 2016. 5 months later, Kyle's friend and classmate Mason Ferrulli developed brain cancer.
14 hours to get the tumor out, and he had 5 weeks of inpatient rehabilitation. He had to learn to walk, talk, eat, everything all over again.
2 more kids at the school were diagnosed this year.
At what point are you saying, we ought to take a close look at the school here?
The moment that I found out that Mason had been diagnosed, it popped into my mind that something was not okay.
The moms believe the recent increase in cancer cases could be caused by radiation from radio frequency, or RF waves, coming from this cell tower located on the elementary school campus.
It is classified as a possible carcinogen. That tells us that there is some evidence out there. We're not naive to the fact that there could be other components out there, other environmental influences, but the bottom line that we feel in regards to this tower is it doesn't belong there if there's any indications that it's unsafe.
You figure it's not worth the risk?
Absolutely.
The school district hired engineers to measure the exposure and concluded the tower met government and industry standards in all respects and posed no threat to student safety. The parents hired their own investigator, who found much higher RF levels than the district did, but still within government safety standards. The American Cancer Society says there is very little evidence to support the idea that being near a cell tower might increase the risk of cancer, but it also says very few human studies have focused specifically on that risk.
Do you believe the oncologists who say cell towers can't cause cancer?
I believe that everybody wants to believe our government. Technology is what it is, and it's growing, and it's growing out of control.
Ferrulli's son's cancer has returned, and he's now undergoing treatment. Prime's son Kyle is in remission, but he still undergoes scans every 3 months.
I've looked into his eyes, and I've looked at the fear that he has as a 9-year-old facing something, asking me, "Mom, am I gonna die?" It would push you to fight as well. It would push any parent to fight. I won't stop until it's done, until that thing is gone.
It's such a perilous threat that it is almost impossible to imagine, let alone describe. When the 5G signature goes live, it will tap into a multitude of satellites which are in geosat orbit around the surface of the Earth. Millions of surface antennas will pick up that signaling and will then scatter the signaling into hundreds and hundreds of millions of different micro antenna systems set up on street lamps and even in your home, which you're not aware of incidentally.
Bit by bit, device by device, we are being exposed to an increasing level of radiation, and this cumulative effect has the potential to cause a great amount of harm to the public. Collectively, each of these devices form a digital panopticon, where private companies, law enforcement, governments, and hackers can literally trace your movements from the moment you wake up and interact with your phone throughout your entire day as you move through public spaces and visit your work, family, and friends. If the public doesn't wake up to these dangers and quickly organize a massive global effort to push back against 5G, the smart city future seems inevitable. So what would this pushback look like, and what can we do as individuals? First, the opposition would need to involve ending the relationship between big wireless execs and government officials, as well as an honest discussion about the established dangers posed by our digital world. Organizing political opposition should take place at all levels, but I highly encourage everyone to start getting involved in their local communities and asking about the dangers presented in this documentary. You can join a local group that might be talking about 5G, privacy, health, or the environment, and let them know about these concerns. If there isn't a group already, you can start one. Pass out flyers at community festivals, farmers markets, concerts, and political events. You can host educational events at community centers and show this documentary. If your neighborhood has a homeowners association or similar group, you can attempt to fight against the installation of new small cells in your neighborhood. Some activists and concerned homeowners have even filed lawsuits in an attempt to stop the 5G rollout.
Airplane mode is your friend. If your phone is close to you, even if you're not using it for a cell phone call, it is intermittently sending out signals to the cell tower to connect to the one closest to you. If your cell phone reception is worse, the radiation is actually worse. So I would use it on airplane, carry it in airplane mode. I'd turn off airplane mode to let things upload and see whatever I need to look at, and then turn it back on airplane mode again. Also, of course, you should never put it against your ear. Instead, you should use a speakerphone away from your body, or use the headphones to do it that way. Next, I called the electric company and I asked to opt out of my dumb meter. I mean smart meter. Evil meter. Honestly, you know, guys, based on some of the YouTube videos I'd seen about this, I expected a war. I expected it to be very difficult. And I was shocked at how quickly and easily it happened. The guy was out the next day to remove it. He was such a pleasure to deal with. So anyway, it's worth a shot. You know, note that there are wall blockers in case you cannot get yours removed. There are wall blockers you can put inside your home to keep it from coming in. Then it began the bigger hassle of getting Ethernet cables ordered to get away from Wi-Fi. And note, get shielded cables. I did not know this at first. Shielded cables will keep even more EMFs from coming out of the cords. I began looking to get my old Wi-Fi router replaced with one that has an off button. It is tricky to find a Wi-Fi router without Wi-Fi automatically on most of the time. You have one now that probably can be turned off from inside in the admin settings, but in terms of one that's for outside, which is what I wanted, and the more I learned about all this, the more I realized I don't want Wi-Fi on pretty much ever. So I now am dealing with blocking Wi-Fi from like my neighbors. And a cell tower that we kind of pick up on here. So that can also be done, and we'll go into that in other videos. But you can block this stuff. One cheap 101 lesson on how this works is it basically is blocked with metal like silver, copper, and steel are all really good blocks of this.
So although I've removed all of the RF from within my house, self-emitting, I am going to be screening now against the neighbor's Wi-Fi, picking it up. And here's what putting screen in front of it does. That's what we want. Okay.
Apple products, of which I have been a long time fan and user, have disappointed me most of all. This is a really important note for parents of children who are using iPads. Please, please do not let your child put that thing in their lap without some kind of shielding or without turning all of the Wi-Fi and everything off. You can like download the games away from them and then give it to them to play in airplane mode. But what I learned was if you hand your kid the iPad and then you go in the car, that thing is still irradiating down even when you're not on Wi-Fi. It kind of made even more sense whenever I remembered that about Steve Jobs not letting his kids have iPads. Anyway, one tool that I forgot to mention during my recording, I want to cut this back in there, is one of these. So one thing that you'll realize whenever you stop, using Wi-Fi is how much content you're looking at on your phone that is using the data for your Wi-Fi. So suddenly you're going to run out of data and be like, oh my gosh. So once you get your Ethernet cables, this thing is amazing because this can connect to your phone, to your Ethernet, and so you can run your phone on airplane mode perfectly safely and not use up your data. Yay! It should go without saying, you should be avoiding Bluetooth headsets, those serious radiation hazards due to the fact that they act like, little wireless antennas blasting EMFs into your brain and ears. What else? Cordless phones. You saw me toss my phone. Although I'll admit that was for dramatic purposes. I actually, recycling it at an electronics center. But I did call the phone company to have them turn back on all these phone jacks throughout my house so that I can have phones everywhere, which they do for free. And then I just went and bought, old school phones. Hey, they're cheap, and you get to start dealing with curly cords like we did in the 80s. Yeah.
Do not waste your money on new age EMF protection devices. Don't waste your money. Everybody's sending me emails or calling me and say, hey, what do you think of the 5G BioShield? Hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? I don't have to think about it. I know for a fact none of these devices are going to protect anybody. None of them. These people are becoming millionaires selling this stuff, and everybody's hoping they can get a 5G or an EMF protection device and they can stick it on their phone or they can put it in their house and they can continue their bad wireless usage habits. It's not going to happen. All right? You need to own a radio frequency meter. You can't ask people their opinions. You can't go around asking me, oh, can I live here? Where is it safe? Is it safe in Arizona? Is it safe in Europe? Is it safe here on this island? These questions are not valid. Meters don't lie. All right? So you need to have a meter in your hand and know how to read it, and the meter will not lie. The meter will tell you if an environment is safe, if an environment is free of exposure factors or has low exposure levels. So people need, forgive me, I have to say it again. People need to get ready to start leaving populated areas. We can't live in apartment buildings surrounded by everybody's wireless devices. We can't live in populated areas where they're putting up 5G transmitters and cell towers up and down the streets. So, number one, own a radio frequency meter, the Safe and Sound Pro that I showed you, or the Acousticom 2. There's a few other decent meters, but I don't want to go into it, but I don't really like that many other ones. The Acoustimeter is a great meter as well, but that's also about $370. It just depends what you want to spend. Own a radio frequency meter and start to get your mind and heart and awareness ready to embrace the fact that it is time to make an exodus out of populated areas. This is not a radical message. It's just what's happening in our world right now.